Hi everyone, Anna Shell here from TutorCore. So now we're going to talk about the science that students will encounter on the SAT. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. So there's no science section on the SAT like there is on the ACT, but students will definitely encounter science on the SAT, so it's important we do some training around it. There are 7 major rules when it comes to approaching science question on the SAT, then we'll go over them all here. So first of all, as I mentioned, students will encounter science-related questions in the reading, the writing and language, and the math sections of the test, so throughout the entire test. Often the questions are paired with charts, graphs, tables, figures, diagrams, or surveys. Here's an example of the kind of graph they might encounter. This one shows populations of 3 different cities and their change over time. So the first rule when approaching these science questions is that students should never be making judgment calls. The correct answer will always be demonstrated by the presented data. So they won't need to bring any outside knowledge, so they shouldn't be pulling from classwork. The only thing they need to understand is how to look at the data provided and pick out the right answer choice based on that. The second rule is that the students should be reading all of the labels. Most of the charts and figures come with labels, which are very important, and students really need to be detail-oriented and know that they'll need all of the information provided to find the right answer choice. The next rule is to identify exactly what data they'll need to answer the question and ignore the irrelevant data. So they need to be looking in the right place. Oftentimes the wrong answer choices may be presented in the data provided, but it might be in the wrong place and the students might be looking there when they should be looking elsewhere. The next rule is to refer to the passage when necessary, because sometimes the data questions will require it. It's like oftentimes in the reading section and the writing and language section, when students encounter figures and charts as part of the passages, they'll also be accompanied by the passage itself. And some questions require that students look at both the figure and then also refer back to the passage. So again, students really need to be detail-oriented, and they might need to reference both the passage and the figure or chart in order to find the correct answer choice. The next rule is that students should start to understand how the College Board is trying to throw them off. So wrong answer choices will often encourage students to interpret data subjectively instead of looking at what's on the page. So we really have to help them learn not to follow those instincts. If answer choices don't refer to information on the page, they're not correct. The next rule requires students sit down and get comfortable with the different and common types of figures they may encounter on the SAT. And the Black Book has a great summary of these, pages 52 to 57. Feel free to pause this video and take a look. Students should at least know the basics of how to read tables, graphs, maps, and pie charts so they're not thrown off by anything they might encounter on test day. It's also helpful to look through all of the practice tests and understand how these types of questions appear on the test themselves in each section. So the final rule to teach students is that the figures, drawings, and diagrams are done to scale unless otherwise noted. So this can be really helpful for some questions, and students may be able to eliminate answer choices immediately just because the answer choices are too large or small to fit on any given scale. It's also important to provide students with a quick primer about surveys and samples because it's likely they might encounter a survey or sample question on test day, specifically in the math section. So the things to teach students and the things to keep in mind is that scientists test a sample to learn something about a larger whole, and they assume the properties of that sample reflect the properties of the whole. So therefore, a sample should include as many properties of the whole as possible. So larger samples generally are more reliable than smaller ones, and that's all you really need to know. So knowing the small amount of information means students should be able to handle any survey or sample question they encounter on test day. Okay, so short and sweet, that wraps the science section, and we might dive into it a little bit more. There'll be a little bit more in the reading section about it, which is our next section that we'll go through, but that's pretty much it. So see you in the next video.